Boom! That's the exact feeling I had when I saw the text pop up on my phone from my younger brother Lucas. Don't come to the weekend barbecue. My new wife says you're not welcome. I'm Brianna Hayes, and no text had ever made my blood boil this fast. My kids, Ella and Liam, were buzzing around the living room, excited for a fun family day. And here I was, frozen, staring at words that cut deeper than any insult my family had thrown at me over the years. I felt my fists clench, my pulse spike, and a plan start to form, slow and deliberate. I wasn't going to crumble. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to vanish quietly. No, this time the stakes were higher. The humiliation that awaited me wasn't going to stick. Not this time. Not with the kids watching. I set my phone down and looked at them, their innocent faces, unaware of the drama heading our way. And in that moment, a fire ignited. The barbecue would not break us, it would witness our power. When we arrived, the backyard was pristine, the smell of charcoal and grilled meat thick in the air. Lucas waved from across the yard, but his smile faltered when he noticed me. And then she saw me, Emily, his new wife, radiating perfection like a spotlight, her gaze sharp and deliberate. Whispers started before I even stepped onto the grass. She's here? Isn't she the one who? Each murmur dripped with judgment. My kids stayed close, holding my hands tightly, their trust anchoring me. I inhaled slowly, letting calm mask the storm raging inside. Emily strutted forward, tone dripping with faux sweetness. "Oh, you came." Her pause wasn't curiosity, it was calculated disdain. She wanted to make us shrink, to make the kids feel small, to make me feel like I didn't belong. But I wasn't about to give her that satisfaction. Every instinct screamed to fight back, to shout, to leave. But I had a better weapon: strategy, timing. And above all, the truth they never saw coming. I walked in slowly, letting the air around me hum with tension. Lucas's awkwardness was palpable, the way he glanced between Emily and me as if trying to smooth an impossible situation. My kids mirrored my composure, but clung to me, sensing the silent battle unfolding. I let them whisper, "Mom, what's going on?" And I smiled faintly. Nothing that will stop us from enjoying today. Emily's eyes narrowed, her smile tight. "Well, I hope you brought yourself," she said, dripping with mockery. I held her gaze evenly, letting the silence stretch. Guests were shifting, noticing the undercurrent of drama. And then the first ripple of anticipation hit, my mind racing through years of preparation for a moment like this. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought exclusion would humiliate me, but she had no idea what I was about to reveal. I let my kids roam slightly, but stayed close enough to control the moment. Emily tried to dominate the conversation, drawing Lucas and their friends into trivial chatter, making sure I felt invisible. I smiled faintly, letting her underestimate me. She didn't know I'd spent years preparing for moments like this. Every insult, every sly jab, every passive-aggressive remark had been cataloged, stored for a day when I could flip the narrative. My pulse quickened, not from anger, but from anticipation. The storm hadn't hit yet, but the calm before it was almost as thrilling as the chaos I would unleash. Guests glanced at me curiously, sensing the tension. And in that charged silence, I felt the first spark of power. I noticed subtle cues, Lucas fidgeting, Emily's smile twitching, the way their friends shifted uncomfortably. They thought the humiliation had succeeded. They thought I would cower. But no, I moved closer to the center of the yard, letting my presence dominate, letting my kids' trust amplify my authority. Every micro-expression, every glance around the yard fed the anticipation. And then I whispered to Ella and Liam, "Watch carefully. This is how we turn the tide." Their eyes widened, a mixture of awe and excitement. This wasn't about anger. It was about strategic revelation, the kind that leaves people speechless. I could feel it. The moment was approaching. Emily, sensing the shift, tried to regain control, laughing too loudly at a joke Lucas had made. I let her play the queen, thinking she ruled the yard, the crowd, the narrative. But I knew better. I could see the cracks forming, the tight jaw, the forced gestures, the flicker of doubt in her eyes. Every element had to be perfect. One misstep and the opportunity would vanish. I inhaled, savoring the tension, the electricity in the air. And then I decided it was time to escalate, to push the first piece into motion. The crowd didn't know what was coming, but they would. I stepped closer to the picnic table, where food was laid out, letting the sunlight reflect off my face, subtle yet commanding. Every guest turned slightly, sensing the energy change. I saw Emily's forced calm falter. Lucas looked stricken, caught in the middle of a storm he hadn't predicted. I whispered to my kids, "Stay close, stay calm." The words were a signal. The trap was set, and the next words I spoke would create ripples that none of them would forget. I waited for the perfect pause, letting Emily bask in her assumed dominance. Then, in a voice clear and deliberate, I said, "You know, it's funny. I didn't realize this was your backyard barbecue. I thought we were renting a space, but it seems, surprise, this house has been mine all along." Gasps rippled across the yard. Eyes widened, mouths fell open. Emily froze mid-step, shock overtaking her arrogance. Lucas looked like he had swallowed a lemon. The whispers crescendoed into murmurs of disbelief. Every guest was processing the reversal, the unexpected twist. And in that moment, my kids grinned, proud and wide-eyed. The crowd's shock was palpable. Emily attempted to laugh it off, her voice shaking. I don't understand," but the words faltered. I held her gaze, calm and composed, letting the silence hammer the point home. Lucas opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly unsure whose side to take. Guests started murmuring, glancing between Emily and me, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Every detail, every carefully calculated move landed with precision. I let the tension linger, the micro-cliffhangers pulling every observer into the moment. My kids, clutching my hands, watched intently. I smiled down at them, whispering, "See how calm strategy can change everything?" They nodded, understanding more than they should at their age. Emily's friends shifted uncomfortably, some staring at the ground, some pretending to check their phones. Lucas glanced nervously between us, realizing the magnitude of the revelation. I let my presence radiate authority, letting the room absorb the shock. And I knew this was only the beginning. I let the words hang in the air, watching the ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Emily's face shifted from disbelief to panic, her lips parting as if she wanted to argue, but no sound came out. I held the moment, letting everyone take in the truth. She wasn't the queen here. I owned the house. Every pool float, every glass of lemonade, every barbecue spatula belonged to me. And suddenly, the power dynamic that had ruled the yard for years flipped in an instant. My kids stared, eyes wide, marveling at their mother's triumph. I felt a rush of vindication, but also a strange tenderness, knowing this was more than revenge. It was proof that strength, patience, and perseverance paid off. Guests murmured, some gasping audibly, while others whispered in disbelief, trying to reconcile the woman they knew with the one standing confidently in front of them. And in that moment, Emily faltered completely, as if the ground beneath her had vanished. Her voice finally returned trembling. "Brianna, how—" she stammered, the facade of superiority cracked, revealing a rare vulnerability. She tried to laugh it off, but it came out hollow, brittle. I shook my head slightly, savoring the tension. This wasn't about embarrassment, it was about acknowledgement, about forcing her to see the truth she had tried so desperately to ignore. I took a measured step forward, letting my presence dominate the space. My kids, holding my hands, mirrored my calm authority. Every whisper, every sideways glance reinforced the power shift. I felt an intoxicating mix of pride and relief. For years, we had endured her manipulation, her subtle cruelty, her constant attempts to make us feel small. And now, the narrative had been rewritten. But as I looked into Emily's eyes, I realized something deeper was at play. Her fear, her desperation, the tiniest fissures of regret beginning to show. She tried to regain control, directing the conversation toward trivial party details. But no one listened. The revelation had stolen their attention, the dramatic pivot too compelling to ignore. I walked closer, feeling my pulse quicken not with fear, but with power. Emily's friends glanced at one another, whispers and stunned looks passing between them like wildfire. I felt a twinge of satisfaction as I saw them recalibrate their perception. Brianna Hayes, the once dismissed sister-in-law, was now the architect of this moment. My kids squeezed my hands tighter, sensing the gravity, and I whispered softly, "Stay calm. Watch this unfold." It wasn't just a victory for me, it was a lesson for them. And then just as I thought the tension had peaked, Emily made a move that surprised even me. She lunged, not physically, but with words sharp and cutting, attempting to reclaim her dominance. "You think money makes you better?" Her voice trembled, more from rage than conviction. I met her gaze evenly, unwavering. "It's not money," I said. "It's truth and recognition. And you finally see it, even if you hate it." The words landed like stones, heavy and unyielding. Guests flinched, some wincing at the confrontation, while others leaned in, captivated. Emily's attempts to humiliate me had backfired spectacularly, her own insecurity now laid bare. My kids watched, eyes wide, as the woman who had often belittled us struggled to find footing. And in that struggle, I realized something profound. Revenge wasn't about cruelty. It was about reclaiming dignity, about teaching lessons through action, not words. But the climax was coming, and the final blow would be unforgettable. I raised my hand, signaling calm, letting the dramatic silence settle like a weight. The backyard shimmered with sunlight, reflecting not just off the grill and the drinks, but the shift in energy. "I didn't come here to fight," I said, my voice steady, deliberate. "I came to show you what strength looks like, and maybe, just maybe, teach my kids that respect is earned, not demanded." A pause. Then, "And yes, I own this house." Gasps erupted, eyes widening, whispers swelling into murmurs of astonishment. Emily's jaw slackened, her usual retorts caught somewhere between pride and shock. I let the moment linger, allowing the weight of revelation to sink in. Every detail, every pause, every measured word had built toward this crescendo, and as I glanced at my children, their faces reflecting awe and pride, I knew the lesson had landed perfectly. But even as the crowd absorbed the news, I noticed the tiniest flicker of something else in Emily's eyes, an emotion that would complicate everything. It was regret, subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. The realization that her years of judgment, manipulation, and control had created a rift that no amount of charm could fix. I had always known this day would come. The reckoning that would force her to confront the consequences of her actions. And now it was here. The guests had mostly recovered from the initial shock, some whispering nervously to one another, others stealing glances at the once untouchable wife, now exposed. I felt the strange thrill of victory mixed with a twinge of sadness. Revenge could teach lessons, yes, but it could not erase the years lost, the moments stolen from us through cruelty. My children, however, were learning something powerful. Their mother stood for them, even when it meant challenging someone who had always seemed untouchable. And I knew this moment would stay with them forever. Emily's lips trembled as she tried to speak, attempting to regain composure. "Brianna, But the words faltered, lost amid the stunned silence. I shook my head gently, letting her struggle hang in the air. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about recognition. about authority reclaimed, dignity restored. Slowly, I began to see a subtle shift in her posture, a grudging acknowledgement that the dynamic had changed. I took a measured step back, letting the energy settle, watching as she processed the reality she had tried so hard to ignore. My kids, standing proudly beside me, absorbed every nuance, every unspoken lesson, and I felt it, the final moment, the crescendo of truth approaching. The barbecue resumed awkwardly, laughter more subdued, conversations tinged with disbelief. I stood near the grill, my mother-in-law at my side, surveying the scene like a conductor overseeing a carefully orchestrated symphony. Emily tried to reclaim normalcy, attempting jokes, gesturing to drinks, but her efforts were hollow. I let her try, letting the crowd adjust to the revelation, letting tensions simmer just beneath the surface. And then I spoke again, calm and deliberate. This isn't just about the house. It's about respect, about understanding the difference between control and influence, about teaching my kids that even when life humbles you, you can rise stronger than before. The words landed, heavier than any insult, more powerful than any confrontation. I could see the wheels turning in Emily's mind, the shift undeniable. Her friends, previously enchanted by her charm and poise, now watched cautiously, glancing between us, absorbing the reality. I felt the subtle satisfaction of dominance, tempered by the knowledge that humility was a hard-earned lesson. Emily finally met my gaze fully, and in that moment I saw a flicker of something I hadn't expected: shame. The acknowledgement that her actions, her arrogance, her need to belittle had consequences that reached far beyond herself. And for the first time, she wasn't laughing. She wasn't dismissive. She was quiet, contemplative, perhaps even reflective. My kids noticed it too, and I knew they understood. Strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's revealed in the quiet moments of justice. The sun began to dip, casting golden light across the yard, and the party slowly lost momentum, guests drifting to other conversations, some still whispering, some trying to ignore the tension. I stood tall, letting the moment breathe. My kids yawned, exhausted but exhilarated. My mother-in-law finally approached, voice low. "Brianna, you really did this perfectly." And I realized, as much as this was about revenge, it was also about education, about showing them that dignity and patience could outshine arrogance and cruelty. But even as I basked in the subtle triumph, I knew the ultimate twist, the one that would seal the story forever, was still to come. As twilight settled over the yard, I noticed Emily's demeanor shift subtly. She straightened, brushing invisible dust off her pride, but the shimmer of superiority she once wore so effortlessly was gone. Guests had started to notice, murmuring in quiet clusters, some still shocked, some impressed. I took a slow, deliberate step forward, letting calm confidence radiate. "Emily," I said softly, "it's time to see me, not the woman you think I am, but the one I've built myself to be." Her eyes widened, a mixture of awe and fear flickering across her face. I let the tension linger, savoring the moment, knowing the micro-cliffhanger in her reaction would leave the memory etched into every witness. She opened her mouth, then closed it, words failing her as the weight of truth pressed down. Years of manipulation and judgment had built walls she didn't know how to scale. I let the silence stretch, each heartbeat deliberate. My kids watched with wide eyes, absorbing a lesson in courage, strategy, and quiet strength. And just when the moment felt at its peak, I dropped the final revelation. "By the way, this isn't just a rental. I've owned this property for over a year." Gasps rippled. Emily's face drained of color. Her friends whispered incredulously. She wasn't just embarrassed, she was dismantled. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, bouncing off the walls and echoing across the backyard. Guests stared, some captivated, some uncertain how to react. Emily opened her mouth again, attempting control, but no words came. A defeated sigh escaped her,
and the air thickened with unspoken acknowledgement. Her era of domination was over. My kids' eyes shone with admiration, and I felt fierce pride. And then a subtle smirk crossed Emily's lips, a fleeting recognition she hadn't expected that perhaps she had underestimated me all along. The sun dipped lower, painting the backyard in molten gold. Emily straightened slowly, attempting composure, but her aura of perfection was gone. I took a measured step closer, voice calm. This isn't just about revenge. It's about understanding consequences, respect, and legacy. She blinked, nodding slowly, digesting the finality of the moment.
My kids grinned knowingly, understanding that strength could be both gentle and firm, that triumph could be silent yet devastatingly effective. And the micro-cliffhanger remained. What would she do with this new reality? Guests began to drift away, some lingering to congratulate quietly, others lost in whispered speculation. Emily remained near the edge of the pool, her expression a tangled mix of pride, shame, and begrudging admiration. She finally spoke, voice low. "Brianna, you've really grown." In that instant, the twist became clear. True victory wasn't about humiliation. It was about reclaiming respect. My kids smiled knowingly, understanding that some lessons are taught without shouting, without cruelty, and the micro-cliffhanger remained. Life would never return to the old dynamic. I held my children close, feeling their warmth and trust. The backyard shimmered under the last rays of sun, a symbol of both material and emotional triumph. Emily watched, tentative, reflective, perhaps contemplating her next steps in this altered reality. I didn't flinch. This was about assertion, teaching my children lessons money could never buy, patience, courage, and strategic revelation. And as we stood together, a subtle tension lingered. What would she do with her newfound awareness? Dinner began to wind down, guests leaving reluctantly, still whispering about the dramatic reversal. Emily tried small, awkward gestures toward reconciliation, her usual confidence replaced with observation. I let her find her footing, knowing the true lesson had been delivered, the truth undeniable. My children whispered excitedly about what had happened, absorbing the subtle triumph. And while the drama had reached its climax, the echoes of the event, tension, reflection, unspoken acknowledgement, would ripple through future encounters. Night fell, lights twinkling across the pool, casting reflections of tension, triumph, and resolution. Emily approached quietly, voice soft. "Brianna, I didn't see it coming." I smiled, calm, measured. "Sometimes the truth takes time to be understood," I replied. Her nod was slight, almost imperceptible, but meaningful. The micro-cliffhanger remained a promise that growth, understanding, and reconciliation would take time, but the first step had been made. The kids yawned, exhausted but exhilarated, and I carried them toward the house, feeling triumphs and relief settle together. Emily watched silently, a quiet witness to the transformation she had inadvertently catalyzed. I glanced back, letting the cinematic moment linger, a pause where past wounds met present victories. And as we disappeared inside, I knew this day would become legendary in our family lore. A story of patience, strategy, and poetic justice. Finally, I tucked my children into bed, their faces serene after a storm of drama. I sat by the window, watching the pool shimmer under moonlight, whispering to myself, "We endured, we prevailed, and no one can ever take this moment from us." The day had been ours, not just through anger, but through strategy, planning, and quiet revelation. Somewhere, I imagine Emily staring at the house, finally comprehending the power she had underestimated, her realization humbling and inevitable. We weren't just survivors, we were architects of our own justice. And for the first time, I realized some victories are sweeter when witnessed by those you love most.